This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am already so excited to introduce to our global community today, because we've had an absolute scream before I even pressed record. We are going international. And as you know, if you've been a community member for some time, that we do have a large swathe of listeners over in America, which is wonderful. And that's largely down to the phenomenal caliber of guests that we are introduced to through our network. And this next guest is no different. This is somebody who, having got to know off screen just now, I think you're going to learn an awful lot from. And my introduction probably won't do her justice, but I'll give it a go. So this is Liz Kislick, and she's the president of Liz Kislick Associates, management consultant, TEDx speaker, Forbes and contributor to Harvard Business Review, and generally wonderfully colourful person, I have to say, with an amazing scarf and a beautiful mug. Welcome to you today, Liz. How are you?
Leisha, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited for our conversation.
I am too. So I hope that was a good snapshot, but you will do a much better synopsis of who you are and what you do for our community today, who are mainly recruiters. So let's do an introduction as to what you do and how you do it.
I'm very fond of recruiters, because without recruiters, we wouldn't have employees. And
True.
that's how I do my job. So very important. So I'm a management consultant, as you said, and also an executive coach. And I work with all kinds of organizations, large to small, all kinds of segments. I think my favorite, if I was going to say I have a favorite, I love family business, and I work in a lot of family and privately owned and operated businesses. And I like them so much because you can cut through the red tape. You can say to the owner or partner or whatever it is, look, this is the thing, and what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And so much of organizational life can get caught up in bureaucracy and hemming and hawing. And I'm pretty candid, and I like to get to the meat of the issue. So, so the great thing is the work I do is disruptive. It's disruptive to have a management consultant come in. It's disruptive to get coaching. And so somebody really has to be committed to doing that.
Definitely.
And then we get to make change, and that's fantastic.
It is. Oh, I love that introduction. I love that description. And anyone that knows me off camera from a professional or actually a personal capacity would actually say that this is somebody that you need to be connected to, Leish, because first of all, most of my clients are, I recruit for the recruitment industry, and most of my business is within owner managed as well, for the same reason that you prefer it. You've got more chance of having a nimble decision made. You've got more chance of influence and persuasiveness and getting to the crux of either the problem you're trying to solve with them, or just planting that seed of, being innovative and creative. But I love the word disruptive anyway, because that's what I think. We're all recruiters technically are disruptive, because we're if we're doing our job properly, because we're challenging the equilibrium of a business, aren't we? We're saying, what about this person? Let's do it. So I love that that's what you're brought in today. I think we're going to have very interesting free thinking here, Liz. So your TEDx talk has received over, and this might be an old stat, I don't know, but I did take this off the information, so please correct me if it's incorrect, accurate. But over 500,000 views on as to why there's so much conflict at work and how you can fix it. But I want to ask you this. How much, when there is conflicts in work, and I guess we might want to define what that looks like, how much of that is down to the leaders and how much of it is down to the individuals themselves?
I love that question, Leisha, because conflict, first of all, we only think of it as conflict if we don't like it. Two people can disagree and resolve it and not think they had a conflict. They think they had a conversation.
True.
Right? They don't think anything of it. We don't label it conflict until it aggravates us in some way.
Yeah.
Which means there's already some kind of problem. And there are times when it truly can be just interpersonal. It's just that you and I have a difference of opinion, and we both harden around our position and we can't figure it out, or we don't have the skills. Sometimes that happens, but not as often, I don't think, as when there are conditions that set the conflict in motion. And this is why leaders are crucial, because you can't deal with underlying conditions, structural issues, norms, historical content without leaders getting involved. The hierarchy has to support the resolution and the change, or else employees in the middle or at the bottom are swimming upstream. And so I get really distressed, actually, when a leader says, "Oh, go work it out."
Right.
You know, you're professionals, go work it out. Well, they wouldn't be bothering the leader if they hadn't already tried.
Absolutely. Like you say, it could be a systemic problem that is actually coming from the culture that the leaders surely have created themselves.
Most likely. And even if it's interpersonal, by the time people go and bother their leader, they need help. If they had the skills to do it or the clout to do it, they would have fixed it already in most cases. And if we all know some people who enjoy conflict, right? Stir the pot, those kinds of things, drama, gossip, all those little nasty imps. When that happens, it's because it's permissible.
Yeah.
And who tolerates it? It's the leaders.
The leaders.
So there is a lot of responsibility on the leader to observe the situation and delve into it, and then decide what to do, which may just be instructing the participants, maybe taking a stance, or maybe convening a task force that actually has to deal with a big structural problem so that a smaller thing can be resolved as well.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of mediation. But I think, okay, flipping it on its head then, what if there are people listening that have tried to empower their teams, you know, this is specifically for leaders. You know, I've created a culture of empowerment, you know, I've got a senior leadership team in place that they resolve these things, and they're not coming to you with the issue, but actually should you then step in, whether it's as the business owner or as the CEO, whatever, should you then step in or leave it to those people that in theory are in place to resolve it?
Great. So, of course, it depends.
Yeah.
If the people you have empowered are demonstrating that they are handling it, people are allowed to make mistakes, get a little bruised, all of that. But if something persists, if there's a pattern, if you see that there is significant cost, or if there is the risk of a bad event, let me make up an example. If there is a conflict in your organization such that an important customer or client will be affected, you can't wait around for that.
No.
Now, does that mean you jump in with both feet? Not necessarily. It might mean that you notify everybody that you're aware that there's some tension. And you are concerned about the impact on customer X. And you'd like to know what's being done to resolve the situation. And that puts it on the table in a more formal way, so that people actually have to rise to the occasion and address it, or create the opening for you to come in and be supportive and help, you know, sort it out. So having your finger on the pulse is necessary. Grabbing the whole wrist, not if you can avoid it.
No, absolutely. And actually, I'm thinking that my brain's gone into scenarios of real situations where leaders have, you know, imparted and confided in me that they've had, you know, they've brought X person in, and then they've just had whether it's conflict, whether it's a clash of personalities, whether it's incompetence, whether it's a little bit of imposter syndrome, or it's probably all of those things, and it threatens one of their big clients. So commercially, it's really important that they then step in. That is a real life scenario that a lot of our audience will resonate with. You don't want to, take the power away from the consultant, the recruiter that's in that hot seat, but equally, they're obviously not the right individual, because what we do is it's about relationships, it's about communication, it's about people blending together. Make a decision as a leader, and you need to swap that individual potentially if they're causing conflict just by being them.
If it's that bad, yes.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a person ruin things.
No.
But you don't want to jump too fast.
No.
Because as soon as you start to control a situation, anything that looks like you are now pulling the strings or micromanaging, the person you are coming on top of has to either fight you. That doesn't happen too much with a leader. Or they have to shrink.
Right. Yeah.
And their shrinking may be terrible for their work.
Yeah.
They may become passive and helpless and say, oh, boss, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And they stop thinking. So finding a more moderate position, like partnering up with them.
Okay.
Let's see if we can, there's a little, stormy seas ahead. Let's partner up on this so that I'm there to give you backup.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. It's a much more diplomatic way to handle it, isn't it? That there's no question, but also you can be observational to see whether it is actually coming from that individual, or it could potentially be from the client themselves. You just don't know. I'm going to give you another scenario here, and I haven't prepared you for this, but this is something that does happen. And there'll be a lot of leaders. So we have the top biller. So the top dog, the one that makes loads of money, cash cow of the business, and they're causing internal conflict here because they're swaggering around thinking they're the big I am, and actually you're finding that there's a little bit of a revolving door around this individual, but you're scared to lose them, you're scared to broach it with them because they are bringing in £1 million or dollars a year, whatever. What advice would you give to the leader going, what do I do? It's like, the best soccer team and the striker's amazing, but everyone else is rubbish. What do we do? Do we damage limitation on the conflict person, or do we, what would you say? Because that happens a lot in recruitment.
This happens all over.
Right. Okay.
And it's partially because when talent manifests, people often look away from the little troubles around this great talent. And if that starts early in someone's career, then the talented person knows they don't have to comply with the normal rules.
Right.
And the longer they go without that, the worse they can get. Okay. So my advice will be a little hard to take. The first thing is, the second you notice that someone is creating dissension and strife, you deal with it right away. I actually have a rule of 3. The first time someone behaves in an ooky way, something's just off. You don't need to do anything because anybody can have a bad day.
Definitely.
The second time you think, oh, that's odd, note it, and think about what you're going to do the third time if it comes up. Because the third time you've got a pattern and you need to jump on it carefully and accurately, but as soon as you can. And if you didn't prepare in the second time, then when the third time happens, you're just kind of horrified. And then you can get guilty and feel like, oh, I can't deal with this. And then you step away, and the 4th, 5th, 6th times, nobody does anything. And then all of a sudden, it's a really big problem. So early.
Yeah.
From a coaching perspective, not a disciplinary perspective. Coaching in the sense of, I notice that when you do this thing, it causes dissension. It's actually a problem for everybody else, and we've got to be able to collaborate. So that's not an effective behavior. Let's brainstorm some other things you could do when you blah, blah, blah. And you're coaching.
I like the terminology and language you use is absolutely brilliant, Liz.
Okay, so that's
because there's not a blame, there's no negative language in there at all. I like it.
It's to help.
Yeah,
it's to help.
Brilliant.
Because what the talented, difficult person doesn't understand is that if they were talented and wonderful, everybody would come to support them.
Yeah.
Not everybody, you know, there's always somebody.
Yeah.
But they would get more natural support. People would be happy to see them coming. They could actually feel better. Okay. So if you have anything brewing, deal with it now.
Right.
And it would have been better if you dealt with it 3 years ago, if you've let it go. But even if it's been 3 years, there's no time like the present.
I agree. Definitely.
And you can still say, you know, I've been thinking about this. I was wondering why we were having these little difficulties, and I realized there's this habit you have that you manifest in this way, and you probably don't know you're doing it, or you may not realize the costs of it. And I want to talk about it because it's actually not effective for the organization. And the talented person may say, but that's how I do the thing I do.
Yeah.
And I might say to that person, but you don't know what it's costing us.
Yeah. The impact it's having. And it might be a reality check. Maybe they've never had anyone say these things.
Many of them don't know. Many of them don't
oblivious. Know. And the way to avoid this in the future is that when you're hiring people who you think have got future star status, is to set expectations in terms of behavior, in terms of, you know, challenging the norm. We're not saying don't be a maverick per se, because that's kind of, there's an element of maverickness about it, but it's being mindful of your impact on other people.
Yes. So a couple of things. One is, in terms of the individual, I like to tell them to be mindful of their turning radius.
Okay, I like that.
I want you to turn. I don't want you knocking anybody else down.
No, good.
Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing, though, is that when you are in hiring mode, one of the most important things you can do is reference checking. I'm talking deep reference checking.
Okay.
Because you'd be amazed what people will tell you.
Yeah.
If you get them in an actual conversation.
Yeah.
And you describe the situation they're coming into, and will this person fit magically into it?
Absolutely.
Or will I need to work with people so that they can accommodate? Tell me the things I'll need to do. And as the reference tells you what you'll need to do to accommodate, what is actually coming out are the things that might have gone wrong.
Yeah. No, I think that's a whole different topic, because reference checking, certainly over here in the UK, is kind of, people are really generally quite binary about it. They either just don't bother or they're sticklers, but it tends to be written, tends to be tick box exercise. Whereas if I do take a reference for a potential candidate, which of course my candidates are recruiters, I pick up the phone to their ex-employee with their permission and say, if you were in my shoes, where would be the best place for me to place them? What environment should I place them in? Where shouldn't I be placing them?
Right.
And then, you know, as the mediator, the facilitator, whether you're getting it right or not.
Part of what's really important is making sure the candidate knows that there's going to be reference checking.
Definitely.
And
see how they react.
Even in the interview,
to
say to them, what are your references going to say about
Definitely.
this or that?
Yeah.
And ask specifically about collaboration.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Very interesting. And I think there'll be plenty of people that will be recording what you've said and just playing it. Can we have Liz out, please, at this moment in time? No, I'm only joking. No, I mean, look, for me, it's about preventing that happening. It's about going back at those few stages. And if we're just instilling this one seed for now, if you're a hiring leader or you're starting out on your own in recruitment, this is brilliant advice of how to avoid having to have these rather uncomfortable conversations, although you've positioned it in a really wonderfully positive way. Actually, they're really awkward conversations for anybody to have, not least the protagonist, but actually the leaders that we're concerned about. So one of the things that you do as your executive coach role is to, go around different sort of workplaces, and I wondered what observations you can share with our audience as to what you see are the most productive, and also I want to say happiest, because that for me is really important, contented workplaces in terms of whether they're working hybrid, blended, back in the office, remote. What are your observations right now?
The first thing I want to say has nothing to do with where you work.
Okay.
It's who you work with.
Yeah.
And I have two things in this regard. And one is absolutely documented by research, and that's the Gallup question about having a friend at work.
Yes.
And if you don't have actual friends at work, you don't feel so happy at work.
No. Yeah, it's really
okay. So that's a crucial thing. A congenial environment makes a heap of difference. The other thing, and this is my observation through the years, there's some tacit rule that you're actually not allowed to be happier than your boss.
Right.
If you're very happy and your boss is very dour, you feel squished in certain ways.
Okay.
You can't skip around the office all joyful. You can't make jokes if your boss is too serious. So that kind of dynamic, and that plays into the thing about people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. People do, of course, stay a long time with terrible bosses if the job offers other things, but they're not as enthusiastic as they might otherwise be. So again, the people make a huge, tremendous, absolute difference. That being said, the current issue of where is someone working from and what really works. This is a matrix of factors, and part of what the whole argument is about is oversimplification.
Okay.
Right? As if hybrid is good, remote is only good for employees, in the office is only good for bosses. No, this is not true.
Yeah, no.
First of all, we're all different. Some humans actually prefer the office.
Yeah.
Either because they like the snacks or
coffee. Yeah, it's true.
Right? Some people really do.
Yeah.
Some people do not have a good work environment in their homes.
True. Yeah.
And they feel better in the office. And there is no question that being with people in a collaborative environment, we spur each other on to greater creativity, holding each other accountable. There's nothing like being in person. So that's all fantastic. On the other hand, we interrupt each other all the time. We all, right? We do.
Yeah,
we all have those horribly annoying coworkers. Let's not even discuss the pain of the commute.
No.
These are things we learned during the pandemic, that it could be a relief to work from home. And the statistics really show that overall, I'm not talking about outliers, overall, people are more productive working from home.
Interesting.
Often because some of that commute time goes into their labor.
Absolutely. That's right? Exactly it. Yeah.
Right. So it's different for every human. That's the first thing. The same way that work is different for every human as it has been from time immemorial. This is just a new lens for looking at it. Okay, so then the question is, are there best practices?
Yeah.
If your team is doing fabulously remotely, partially it's because you as the leader are doing a good job of keeping them together.
Yeah, agreed.
And you are making sure there are deep relationships and ongoing communication. And those two things are crucial. but you've got it structured in a way that happens to be working, and the people you happen to have work well in that mode.
Yeah.
If that's the case and it's really great, periodically come together for a social/work event.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that might be 4 times a year.
Mm.
And that's very similar. Even before the pandemic, there were global companies that managed to not see each other with any frequency,
Absolutely.
but might once a year have some kind of thing. So 4 times a year feels better to me, so I'm saying 4. But periodically being in each other's presence, together. The joyfulness is extraordinary.
Of course
when people come together. Right. The thing not to do, not, is to demand that people be back in the office. Because that is often a form of demonstrated anxiety on the part of leaders that I don't trust that you're working if I can't see you.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels to the employee, doesn't it? It does.
I can't manage you if I can't look at you. So that's really symptomatic of less good management.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. We're past the point where the panopticon is necessary. We are past the point where a 4-person needs to walk by every workstation and look at the pile. We're talking about knowledge workers.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're not talking about food service where you have to
be
right?
there.
We're not talking about hospital.
Yeah.
We're talking about knowledge work. So that's indicative of your own lack of trust, and it's a kind of projection. Maybe you wouldn't have worked so well if somebody wasn't sitting over your shoulder. Well, that's not fair. So don't do that. Then you have to look for what are the benefits and advantages and good ways of doing hybrid.
Yeah, definitely.
And in general, those center around which days, times, hours should we be together for the greatest productivity. So figure that out. Don't just pick it.
Right.
Think about it
Okay.
deeply.
Yeah.
Okay. Only be together for things that are together. Create, perhaps, there are 2 days in the week when we have all our meetings.
Yep.
I'm not talking about with customers and clients.
No, to get internal. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But don't make people come into the office so that they sit at a desk and don't talk to anybody.
No.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And then you hear of people that are brought into the office and then they're doing Zooms with one that couldn't make it. And you think, you've missed the point entirely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So plan physical presence because physical presence is worthwhile.
Yeah, it is, definitely. It's connectivity. I have to say, I mean, I've asked that question before, not to loads of guests, but I have had people on before who've had some notion around workplace culture, etc. But I think that's possibly the most pragmatic one and useful one that we've had, because I think it will really resonate, because the most asked question I get from leaders is, what should we be doing? And my answer is always what you've just said. My answer is always, it's what suits you and your business. It's not necessarily what Joe Bloggs is doing down the street. So I love that that's coming from your mouth rather than my mouth once. So that's absolutely brilliant. It's been really insightful. And you know, I can't see that changing in what is, you know, this new world. So, you know, I guess just for me, what I've taken away from that is understanding your own business metrics, your own culture and what works for you. Just because, like I say, that your competitor down the street is doing it, when we stay true to what's right for you and your team. Right. And who are your people? I mean, one of the things I'm sure recruiters notice, you can place more people in jobs if they're remote. Yeah. Right? Because then you have the whole world to draw upon. So remoteness is a value. Well, pay attention to that in your own practice. Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree. That's been really, really useful. Well, before we go, I want to ask you about a very hot topic that is definitely hot on this side of the Atlantic. I don't know what it's like over in there. I imagine just as great. ChatGPT and how you think it will affect the workplace at the moment in its present form? Let's talk 2023, 2024. Let's talk about the next 2 years.
Yes, that's good. So I'm not a cynic, but I'm a skeptic.
Okay.
And there have been so many exercises done with ChatGPT and other similar AI tools.
Mm-hmm.
Very good on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Not so great in depth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's similar to people you wouldn't want to actually hire or place.
It's true.
Good on the right? Good on the surface is fantastic for a casual interaction, not what you want for a long-time relationship. Too much error in there, no matter what you do. And my concerns about ChatGPT, particularly, or any kind of AI, including the stuff that's being used today, particularly for recruitment, it dulls everything down. If all you're looking for is keywords, if all you're looking for is algorithms, you are going to miss some things that don't have keywords or fit the algorithms, even though they might have been great.
I feel like it's going to homogenize a whole industry.
Perfect word. I think if you want to use it to screen out things you know don't work.
Definitely.
Or to screen in things you know do, but do not use it blindly. In the same way, so I haven't experimented with it yet personally, although I know people who are using it to write first drafts of articles, for example.
Yeah.
But I think it must be harder to jazz up a boring sort of rote thing than to be edited, which is another potential use for it. Where it has your own creative content first.
That's the feedback I've been getting, actually, Liz. I mean, generally, people that are advocates are saying it's an enabler. It's obviously a time saver. You know, in the same way we wouldn't go and get our encyclopedias anymore to search something. We would just ask our smart speaker or go on the web. So I think it has got the capacity to save time for certain tasks, but it's to enable us to still import and, you know, marginalize what could come across as very homogenized, which is my concern, I guess. But I'm trying not to be cynical or skeptical about it, but actually, you know, still personalize and be authentic with whatever it is you're using it for to create. I mean, a lot of people that I've spoken to about it are saying it could be really useful for CV writing, for websites, for content. I would like to think that if we fast forward 5 years, I'm not reading the same old on LinkedIn. That's
if everything looks the same. No one wants you.
No,
it's the same. So I'm going to suggest an odd structural thing in dealing with it.
Okay.
If you use it for a screener, you need a much more sophisticated person to then look at its output. Okay? Because the more you make things the same, the more the human evaluator needs to understand nuance.
Definitely.
And when you are setting up your parameters, you don't want someone who operates in rote ways. You don't want to standardize that.
No, definitely not. You can have that, guys. There you go. You've heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. We've covered a lot, Liz, and we knew in theory we were going to cover a lot, but my God, we could have had about 4 different episodes there. That was so jam-packed and so much fun, and I've no doubt, you know, there's going to be people wanting to connect to you, so we'll make sure that they've got access to all of your contact information, and remember to mention us if you do connect over to Liz. And thank you so much for joining us. I knew it'd be absolutely delightful and insightful, and the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast is very grateful to you, Liz. Thank you so much.
Really fun to talk to you, Leisha.
And you too.